Okay, hello everyone and welcome to 10:30 session of the virtual roundtable web conference. In this session we're happy to introduce, where is it? How do I pronounce? We're happy to introduce WAYZGOOSE Press, and our speaker is Greta Gorsuch, if I pronounce Gorsuch. Okay, so Greta is professor of applied linguistics at Texas Tech University. She has lived and taught in Japan, the Philippines, the United States, and Vietnam, and has been teaching ESL, EFL for 32 years. Her research interests are in second language education, course evaluation, materials design, testing, reading and speaking fluency. Her articles on these topics have been published in numerous, I won't state all of the publications that you've been published in because there's so many, like more than a dozen professional magazines and journals. She's also author and editor of tests that second language teachers make and use by Cambridge Scholars Publishers, and co-author of second language course evaluation and second language testing for student evaluation and classroom research. And she has written original fiction for adult literacy learners and ESL learners. So this is a short version of Greta's work. This session is being live streamed and recorded both on YouTube and Facebook. And we're saying hello to all these people who are watching us and following the streams. So I will just turn off my camera and mute my microphone and give the podium to Greta. Welcome.
Thanks so much. What a great introduction. Welcome to the great state of Texas. Hello, I should say. It's not sun up here yet, so it's still a bit dark. My name is Greta Gorsuch, and from time to time I'll be drinking some iced tea to wake up. I'm going to give a presentation on the role of fluency in second language comprehension. And I taught English as a foreign language for many years overseas. And of course, in any kind of foreign language teaching situation, your big struggle and your learner's big struggle is to get enough input and experience using the second language, particularly if you're in a country where that language is just not commonly used. So I became very interested in this many years ago, and just in the last several years I've been writing original fiction, thinking I could write some great materials that students can use to increase their reading fluency. And I should tell you, I do have my chat button on my chat screen, so anytime you have a question, just type in a chat and I'll answer. So my big thing is to build input and language experience for adult second language learners. So just real quickly, a few notes. What I consider to be adult learners are second language learners 15 years and older. And I simply say second language because any language that's second language that's learned in the brain is a second language. Of course, we have foreign language settings and we have second language settings, but in the brain, it's all the same. It's a second language. So adult learners I consider to be second language learners 15 years and older. So these would be high school kids, but also adult learners as well, older. Also, reading fluency I define as fast and accurate character and word recognition, and also basic post-lexical processes such as parsing sentences. Who does what to who, basically. And then a third term that I will use a lot in this presentation is that of independent reader. And this is a learner who can engage in sustained silent reading or read materials of his or her own choosing for enjoyment or for other self-selected purposes. So these are just a couple of caveats to remember when I give this presentation. So second language learners who are learning a language in a country where the L2 is not commonly used may have little experience using the language for particular purposes. Also, they may have few opportunities to develop skills in language use, including reading, I would argue. And they're also very likely to have a limited vocabulary range. And they're likely to have limited automaticity in word recognition while reading. And this is going to be actually a critical focus on this presentation, this lack of automaticity, restricted vocabulary range, but the lack of automaticity in word recognition skills. Okay. So I would venture or argue that second and foreign language learners need comprehensible input and experience with the L2 and lots of it. I think also that reading may be the only one truly good source for language input and experience, not only for independent reading use, but also for classroom use. So we have technologies, we have computers, we have all kinds of ways that we can, interact with others using the L2, English as a second language or a foreign language in this case. But I would also say that books still remain the one dependable technology that are everywhere, and they will always be there for us. And I think that reading books and also using technology platforms is the one truly good source for language input and experience. There's only so many times we can set up interaction for our students, particularly when we're working in large classes or the students are only with us a couple of hours a week. So that's my argument. All right, so if reading is going to be a major source of language input and experience, then I would argue that reading fluency must take a front and center role in language programs. And the question is, why? And here are some things that I commonly hear from other teachers and other programs. Well, learners need to comprehend what they read, right? If they do not, I can guarantee they will not read. I can tell you that. And if readers are not fluent readers, they do not comprehend texts. So that's my argument. And then we also need to understand then what reading fluency is, and most importantly, how to help learners develop it. And so here, this is what teachers often tell me when I talk to them about reading. First, fluency and accuracy are just trade-offs, right? It's just like speaking activities, right? Well, I want my students to be accurate. That is most important. It's okay for them to read slowly because if they read slowly, they're accurate. That's one folk belief. Another is, what if I want my students to read slowly and carefully because that's accuracy, so I can introduce new grammar and vocabulary and make sure they do well on tests. So there's another folk belief about what reading fluency is. No, students can learn to read or build fluency on their own. That's all going to be homework. We're not going to work on fluency or reading in class. They can do that as homework. That's another folk belief. And then fluency just means someone is born good at language. They're just born with that. It's luck or it's natural talent. And I would argue that no, we need to develop fluency, and there are some fun ways we can do it. I have here a message from Tatiana to everyone, and I can't quite see the whole message. Let's see if I can pull it over. She says, the faster a learner reads, the more information he or she can acquire. Yes, that's very true. I would also say that as learners become more fluent readers, they actually improve in terms of their metacognition, and they become more aware of trade-offs that they can make between, well, I think I understand this passage pretty well, I can read faster, or they will be fluent enough to realize, hey, I'm not comprehending a couple of parts of this sentence. There's a word I don't get of as an expression. I want to go back and reread that more slowly. So they have more control over the speed at which they read. They can make interesting metacognitive decisions. Thank you, Tatiana, for that great comment. Just one more folk belief. Being fluent is not as good as learning a language through effort and achievement on tests and assignments. So these are just some folk beliefs that I've heard over the years about reading, but particularly about reading fluency. And so I'd like to present another view based on research and also inquiry. All right. So first, fluent readers have good lower order comprehension processing. They can identify words and parse sentences efficiently and effortlessly. And then this is important enough to repeat. Their word recognition skills are fast and accurate. And this basically is what a fluent reader can do. This is what reading fluency is where word recognition is fast and accurate. So if someone says to you, oh, someone who's a fluent reader is not accurate, that's not the case. If someone doesn't have fast, accurate word recognition of a certain basic number of words, they will not be fluent readers. All right. So fluent readers can use higher order comprehension processing as well, making inferences and monitoring comprehension. So the more fluent a reader is with basic word recognition and sentence parsing processes, the more fluent they are, the more attentional resources they have that they can call on to comprehend a text better, and they can start making inferences and then monitoring their own comprehension. And so my argument is that if large amounts of attentional resources are used to just struggle with these lower order comprehension processes, then the higher order processes cannot be invoked. They can't be invoked. So there's only so much we can do at one time with our attentional resources. So what is this attentional resources stuff? Attentional resources, yes. Basically, attentional resources are how well we can pay attention to multiple mental tasks at one time. So attentional resources are all limited. This is all true for all human beings. Attentional resources are another phrase for working memory by Justin Carpenter, the American researchers. And working memory is strongly, strongly implicated in reading, and particularly with fluent reading processes. So just really quickly, for those of you who are not up on working memory, there are two basic parts to it. One is called the blackboard, and then the other is what I would call processing capacity. So the blackboard, which is a mental blackboard taking place in here, is one component of working memory, and it's how much information a person can remember at one time while not doing anything else. All right, so for many, this would be 7 digits of numbers as example, as in 583-0210, which is actually my childhood telephone number. I still remember it. So we're born with blackboards of particular sizes, and then this size varies with individuals and between individuals, and we cannot change its size. We have no control over that. We can't intervene. The blackboard is something that whatever power posits us, we're given, and that's what we have. And then the other part of working memory is processing capacity. So a second component is how well we can do a task, such as reading, with the information that we hold on our blackboard. So we have these 7 digits of information in our blackboards, and then how well can we do reading while we're still holding stuff in the blackboard? So meaning doing complicated stuff such as L2 word recognition at the same time, new information is coming in. And oh, how would I pronounce this name? It's in Arabic. Someone's just popped up a chat. It's very interesting. Reading stretches the size, I think, not of the blackboard, but where we can intervene as teachers is we can increase processing capacity. Now that we know that processing capacity is limited, but it's something we can change. And we can do that with reading fluency. Ah, Nesma, thank you. Nisma, thanks so much. Thank you. We can expand processing capacity. That's something we as teachers and our learners can do about. So if processing capacity is limited by poor word recognition, then working memory just gets overwhelmed. It just gets overwhelmed. And I can actually even tell you what that looks like. So when you give up on a text, you know, you're reading, you've got this book and you're reading and that's it, I'm overwhelmed, I've got to stop. When you get overwhelmed with the text, or when you see a learner give up, you can see this in class when you're doing reading fluency or you're just working with reading activities, you can see students just give up. When you see the furrowed brows, the comprehension questions are answered incorrectly, and the learner's eyes are darting back to earlier parts of the sentence, they keep looking back. Usually this means that working memory has gotten overwhelmed. Working memory has just gotten overwhelmed. So many attentional resources have gotten eaten up by slow, inefficient word recognition processes that comprehension just breaks down as we've gotten overwhelmed. And this happens to us in our first languages as well. This is not just a second language phenomenon, but particularly when we're grappling with a second language. When I try to read Japanese, for example, certainly when I try to read Vietnamese, my word recognition is not great in either of those languages. And as a result, I get overwhelmed. I can't take in the new information. And it's because I have poor word recognition. All right, and Tatiana has given a chat. Yes, we're born with different blackboards of different sizes. Yes, this is one of the great gifts of whatever power that posits us. Our brains are beautiful things. So whatever blackboard size we have, we're born with, but we can, as teachers and learners, also work with our processing capacity. And I'm going to give you a methodology for doing that. So just a quick reminder, working memory is our blackboard. We cannot do anything about the size of the blackboard. And as teachers, we have no way to intervene with that. But with working memory processing capacity, that is something we can do as learners and as teachers. And I'm a language learner myself. So, and I'm thinking after this conference, I need to study some German. So anyway, about the processing capacity, this is where reading fluency training comes in. And training does not need to be training, boring training, which is horrible. All right. So in the research world, in second language research, oops, sorry, there's been more attention of late being paid to lower order comprehension processing. All right, this is a good thing. And despite years of research and practice on enhancing sort of higher order comprehension processes, students, learners still find reading painful and laborious. And in other words, many of our learners remain non-fluent readers. So none of the pre-reading activities and tap into background knowledge tasks will help if learners' lower order identification processes remain undeveloped. We can do all the top-down stuff we want, but it's not going to help if word recognition isn't better. So one cause of this continued slow, effortful reading may lie in the underdeveloped word recognition skills of readers, where readers access word pronunciation and meaning from texts. And so reading fluency, defined by Samuels, an American researcher, is the ability to decode and comprehend text at the same time. And this is critical to successful reading. So I would suggest a very interesting methodology called repeated reading to develop reading fluency. And I'm going to type in the name of my research partner, and he was the one who really got me interested in this. And I owe him a debt of gratitude. He's Etso Taguchi. He's in Japan, and he got me interested in repeated reading as a really fun and very effective methodology for increasing reading fluency. So I'm just going to call it RR, or repeated reading. So repeated reading is the practical expression of automaticity theory. This is again Samuels, the American researcher. So to engage in a complex processes such as reading, some of it has to be automatized or executed without having to pay too much attention to it. And so repeated reading in particular seems to work on word recognition processes and helps to develop it. Right, and Tatiana is very active this morning. She has added a comment. Maybe one of the ways to activate our learners' reading ability is the correct choice of pre-reading while reading and after reading tasks. Absolutely, that is very true. I would always practice these kinds of before, during, and after reading text. But I would also argue that repeated reading or reading fluency training specifically has also a place in such a nice integrated before, during, and after reading practice. And I'm going to give you some ideas about how we can do that. So thank you so much, Tatiana. Maybe if Tatiana could tell us where she's chatting from, that would be very interesting. So repeated reading, what does it look like? So a typical repeated reading session takes 25 minutes. It is methodologically simple. So 1, participants read an approximately 500-word segment of a text once while timing themselves with a stopwatch. And they write their times on a log sheet. They just keep it themselves. And you have to keep telling students, the stopwatch serves you. You do not serve it. So don't read fast just because you've got this stopwatch. And after a while, they get that. 2, participants then read a second and then a third time while listening to it on an audio file or when it's being read aloud by the teacher, which is always fun, all right? So by this time, they've read the same passage 3 times. 3, participants finally read a 4th and a 5th time, timing themselves for each reading and marking their times on a log sheet. And then 4, participants write a short report either in the L1 or the L2, their choice. And this might be related to what Tatiana's talking about, having these post-reading activities where learners then can write a short report. And there are many things that you can ask them to do, but you could simply be very open-ended and just say, just write about whatever comes to your mind. And what's interesting when I worked with Vietnamese learners of English in Vietnam, that was the prompt that I gave them. And they ended up talking about how their metacognition was changing. They summarized without being asked to summarize. They really showed a lot of interesting awarenesses that I didn't know they had about the text because their fluency was increasing. And each time they read the same passage up to 5 times, they were comprehending more each time. Yes, and Dr. Aparna Chakraborty, in an interesting country, I'm sure, somewhere, he says, this is all silent reading. Yes, this is sustained silent reading. Sorry, we flip back here. Yes, it's all sustained silence reading, except for step 2, where participants are reading silently a second time and then a third time while listening to it in an audio file or when the teacher decides to get up and then perform for them. But they are listening and reading at the same time. And it turns out that this double input is very important. And the learners talk about it unbidden in their post-reading reports a lot, saying that it helped them figure out how to parse out sentences. Who does what to what? Where do the ideas shift within a sentence and within paragraphs? So some people have asked me over the years, so what does 500 words look like? This would be a typical repeated reading treatment. So what does 500 words look like? Well, here's 119 words because I couldn't fit 500 words onto a PowerPoint screen. So I did 119 words, and this comes from the Bee Creek Blues, which is one of the books that I'll be presenting on later today during Heike's tour of her beautiful conference site here. This is what it looks like. Basically, the day was hot, the sun was bright, there wasn't any place to get cool. So 500 words would be about 5 times the amount of language that you see here on the screen. And of course, you can choose readers that are much easier than this. What we're looking at right here is the Common European Framework of Reference, A2 or B1. That's about what this text is. But the point is that with repeated reading, we would be having segments of a story of about 500 words. So about 4 to 5 times what you see on the screen here. All right. And then is this Nisma again? She says, the problem is I don't have time to do all that. So I feel students are not getting the reading practice they need. Well, as I mentioned earlier, it takes 20 to 25 minutes. And I'll go back a slide. It takes 20 to 25 minutes. With the Vietnamese readers learners that I work with, and also learners of Japanese in the United States, we are very constrained for time. You know, the course logic is off in foreign language education. We're never scheduled with enough time to do the things that our learners need to learn. And so between 20 and 25 minutes is actually a very good investment, and it doesn't take that long. And at first, when students start using this method, it seems like, oh, it's going to take too much time, but they get used to doing it and they get better at it, and you don't have to expend so much effort and look at the clock so much. One other thing I would say is that when you teachers yourselves are doing this 20 to 25 minutes a week, usually once a week or twice a week is fine, you yourself should be reading silently the passage while the students are also reading. You should be enjoying it yourself. Okay. So choosing these texts for fluency training is not a challenge once you've figured out how to do it. The main thing is that you need to use short, easy texts for fluency training. Now you can use more difficult texts for intensive reading lessons, but we're talking here about doing reading fluency training. Just getting students and getting their minds to be more efficient and quick and accurate at word recognition. All right. So you always need to select short, easy texts. These, for particular treatment, it would be 500 words or less with fewer than 5 unknown words. So in the case where you actually have a graded reader or just easy text, this would be, for example, one story. What you would do is you would segment the story at discursively relevant points, all right, and cut them off. And graded readers are excellent sources for a program of repeated reading treatments. And then there are many sources for graded readers and easy text in many languages. And I'm going to try and figure out a way to have this as a PDF on the website so all of you can access these sources. So just really quickly, when using a graded reader or easy text, simply cut apart longer stories at discursively relevant places so you have successive sections of 500 words or less. And so do one treatment, repeated reading treatment of a 500-word text in one class, and then you would do a second repeated reading of the next 500-word text in the next class. So students build up understanding. And my last slide, I promise. Independent readers can read language and culture better. And if anyone can figure out where this is, you will get a special prize. Thank you very much.
So thank you, Greta. This was really interesting and wonderful presentation. And thank you for answering all the questions and monitoring the chat all the time and answering all the questions along the way. Thank you everybody for watching. And our next session will begin at 12 o'clock, which is now. And it will be Virtual Expo 2 in the main venue, which will be done by Heike. I hope Heike is here somewhere so she can join us.